We're here every Wednesday at 7 p.m. because we want to grow you as a defender.
The defender seeks the challenge of standing up for what's morally and ethically right, and is willing to step forward and put themselves in harm's way because they believe that sacrifice and love is the way to do things.
And what we mean by that is that you can grow as a good shooter, but what we're really here for is to help you grow personally as a defender. We know that personal growth and shooting growth go hand in hand, and we want to work to help you become better people in your lives, in your everyday lives, and that's going to translate to your shooting on the range. So that's what we're here for. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Defenders Live. I am your host, Laura Thorson, and I'm so glad that you're attending tonight. Tonight is January 25th, 2023, and we have a great show for you tonight. Thank you for attending. If you're watching tonight from a replay, or if you're brand new, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. And all of y'all that watch me every week know, please shout out in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from. We always love to hear from you. Tonight, we're going to be talking to the talented Tim Herron of Tim Herron Shooting, and we'll be talking about developing a passion for mastery and learning, as well as many other topics. And as always, Adam Winch, the founder of Defenders USA, will be running some things behind the scenes, and he may jump on tonight from time to time. So you guys should be used to that by now, but I just want to warn you just in case he jumps on. So don't be alarmed. And speaking of Adam, here's a quick message from him about our friends and sponsors.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen, Adam Winch with Defenders USA. I want to tell you about some of our friends and sponsors. I'm a brand ambassador with H&K Firearms. I carry a VP9 from H&K in Defensive Life. I use it on the range. I use it in training. This is my go-to gun. I highly recommend the VP9 from H&K. Next, Iron American. You can see this bottle here, or the one that's hanging off my range bag in front of the camera. That's what I use for liquid chalk on the range. There's also a discount code through Defenders USA that you can get some, and I'd strongly encourage you to order some liquid chalk from Iron America. Next, my gun is carried in a Haven Defense Co. holster. You can find them at havendefenseco.com. Haven Defense Co. You can see their brown leather patch on the front of the bag. And then, of course, there's a Defenders USA patch. You can come to training and try to earn that patch, too, from Defenders USA.
So at the end of this live, if we have questions for Tim Herron in the comments, we're going to have a live Q&A with Tim. So please shout those out in the comments as well as we go on here. We'll be keeping track of those questions, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So please feel free to comment and during the broadcast. And let's just see if anybody's been shouting out so far. We've got Brent from Colorado. Thank you for joining tonight. Some people from Arizona. Tori's here. Where are you at tonight? Michigan, it looks like tonight. That's great. Somebody from Georgia. Looks like at least one person from my Montana gang is hanging out with us tonight. So that's great. Kara from Arkansas is here. Thank you, Kara, for watching. Dawn from South Carolina. Dawn, I'm so glad you're watching tonight. And Heather is back from Arizona. And then another user from Ohio. Don't know the name, but guys, if it shows up as Facebook user in the bottom corner, that just means that you're commenting from a private group. So if you're watching this live from a private group rather than from a public page or on YouTube, then it'll just show up Facebook user, and you may not want everybody to know your name on there. I don't know, but if you've wondered why it says Facebook user on there, that's why. All right. And then somebody else from Texas. So thank you guys all for watching. I'm so happy that you're here. And also, if you find value in these live streams, please join the Defenders Live Facebook group, as well as subscribing to the Defenders Live and Defenders USA YouTube and Rumble channels. So get off my soapbox about that. And let's get into our special guest tonight, Tim Herron of Tim Herron Shooting. Tim is a USPSA Grand Master shooter and a Masterclass IDPA shooter. He's been instructing since 2015 and loves working with people of all skill levels. He has a heart for teaching, and I love people like that. And he makes a personal investment in the improvement of every shooter that he teaches. So let's bring Tim Herron on. Welcome, Tim. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Hi, Laura. Thank you for having me.
You bet. It's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this interview. I don't know you especially well, but I have watched you online. And one of the most fascinating things about you, Tim, for me, at least in the beginning when I learned about you, is your story. And you have an interesting story. You actually used to work for Honda as, did you say you were a master mechanic?
Yeah, I was a master technician since I want to say 19, Jesus, 19. I want to say 1998 is when I first was employed with at a Honda dealership, and then kind of worked up the ranks and became a Honda master technician, and was a Honda master technician until I left the field officially in 2018. So yeah, a long time, 23, 24 years, something like that. So altogether.
Right. Yeah. And so that fascinates me. I get the correlation now, but I do want you to go more into your background about how you went from a mechanic to a firearms instructor. And not only that, but quite the shooter as well. So how did that all come about?
So I've always had a passion for teaching, right? I mean, I say right like but
Well,
I've
I
always
do,
had a
but
passion for teaching.
uh-huh.
When I mean, out of college, and then right into my first career, which was the automotive field. I had kind of always thought that I would go from get 3 or 4 years or 5 years or whatever of experience as an automotive, in the automotive profession, and then kind of move into a more like coaching, teaching role or mentorship role.
Mm-hmm.
Life things happen. You get married, you have kids, you don't get back, you're not able to get back to go to school and things like that to finish a bachelor's degree and stuff. But along the way, as I'd been, kind of working up the ranks, as a master technician, I'd always been a fairly extroverted, very personable, person. And I'd love to help the newer guys, or the guys that were not as experienced. So I've always had a hunger and a yearning to want to better everybody, like we're all there to do a role. We're all there to, to help customers. So why not make, kind of help breed the best technicians we can. So I was given the opportunity, God, way back in the day, 2003, 2004, to become a mentor, like at my dealership that I worked at, and mentor young techs. So as younger, technicians come in, or high school students that come in, and they work on the lube rack for a couple of years or so, and if they show potential in kind of wanting to further expand their horizons as an automotive tech, that they'd put them under me for say 6 months to a year or 2 years, and I would mentor them along the way to to help them become an automotive technician. And so that was very rewarding for a long time. I got into, kind of as a hobby. Of course, I'd always been kind of a car nut. Into a hobby, I got into SCCA, or sports car club racing, and primarily autocross, and then what they call time trials, which is like autocross or time trials, like one car at a time on a race car track. And I loved that and fell in love with performance driving. And that became like my number one passion for many years. I started doing that in 97, 98, and I carried that until about 2010, 2011, when I kind of picked up shooting. But along the way in performance driving, I had kind of risen up the ranks and kind of proven myself. And I had sought out instruction, with driving coaches to make me a better driver. And I saw the value in teaching and instruction. And I had a couple of mentors along the way that kind of, I guess, saw my potential as an educator as well. That kind of took me out of, kind of out of the driver's seat, so to speak, as a student, and put me in the passenger seat with a helmet and a notepad, and were telling me encouraging me to okay, teach, like show me
Yeah.
what you got, how, like, and learning how to then convey information to students. So that,
Yeah.
that started a very kind of long lasting career as a performance driving instructor for a number of years. Until I'll be honest, I kind of burned out. I burned out of it. But a lot of it had to do with, like, my kids were getting a little older. Racing
Yeah.
was becoming more and more expensive. It
Yeah.
was cutting into, family time. It was cutting into work time, and all of those
Mhm.
things. And
Mhm.
I probably stretched myself a little thin, for a lot of it as well.
Mhm.
I took a break. 2009, 2010, I took a break. And then a good friend of mine was a, like, armed security officer and had to go do, on a day that I had off, went to go do their qualifying for the year. And I was like, qualifying? What do you mean qualifying? They were like, well, why don't you come with me? You got the day off. You could see what it's like to qualify. And I was like, okay. And so I watched that, went to the range. It was kind of one of my first times at the shooting range. And I really wasn't from a family of gun owners or shooters or things like that. So it was all kind of foreign to me, right? But I
Mhm.
knew how to go fast. That was
Yeah, you already were going fast, yes.
right. So I went and followed them and watched them qualify. And after they were done, I was like, man, that looks like a lot of fun. Can we can we use your duty gun and I'll buy some ammo, and, like, you show me a thing or two to shoot? And they said, yeah. And it kind of went from kind of showing me the ropes a little bit of just, like, how to hold it and how to grip it and how to press the trigger and how to align the sights and things, to, like, I mean, I I fell in love with it, and it was just like, man, it was
Yeah.
something that was really fun, really neat to do. I saw also the value, obviously, from as a defender, right? Like,
Mhm.
I was a single dad of two kids. Had some other changes that kind of, that kind of went on in life that had me kind of living in, like, some different, some questionable areas, kind of getting back on my feet, financial situations and things that it
Mhm.
made me really start to question or second guess the safety of, like, myself and my kids, and my family. So it was one of those things where I kind of took seriously too. Is like, man, I hadn't really ever thought about a firearm before, but this really is something that both interests me, but as at the same time, it's something that I really want to get a lot more knowledge and more education on as well. So
Mhm.
that honestly is what kind of, led me down the way to gun ownership.
Mhm.
Turned I quickly kind of found USPSA and competitive shooting. And for me, that was like, man, and instead of racing in cars, it's racing with guns. Like, that's right my alley. So that's kind of where the passion for USPSA came from. And
Yeah.
I kind of rose up the ranks there. And as I continued to train and improve my own skills and progress and seeing success, then other people started reaching out to me. They're like, hey man, how did you get so good at that? Can you show me a
Mhm.
thing or
And
two?
then your teacher
And
kicked in,
right.
didn't
And that
it?
was kind of like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I can do this too. And me having those light bulb moments then turned into me wanting to teach other people and
Right.
give them those light bulb moments. So
Yeah.
that's what really prompted me then to, like, I kind of dabbled for a little while, 2014, 2015, teaching a little bit, just kind of a part-time thing. And people were willing to give me money to teach them how to be better with a gun. Right. And I was like, well, this is kind of cool. I can maybe use a little bit of this income to, like, like, help pay my way into matches and things like that. I was just
Mhm.
using it as a way to subsidize my hobby. And
Yeah.
it slowly but very quickly and surely grew into, now I'm kind of backed up against the ropes by, like, 2017, where I was teaching almost full time and still working full time. And it just
Oof.
got to the point after 22 years, and by 2017, it's 22 years in the field. I was like, man, I actually had to sit down and talk with my service manager at the time. I was like, okay, so listen, here's what I'm
Here's
thinking.
the deal.
And he knew, like, my passion. He knew I was very passionate about it, and so he was
Yeah.
very supportive as well. And
Mhm.
he was like, "Hey, man, you got to do what you got to do. If you ever want to come back, you're welcome to come back." But so I kind of started towards the end of 2017, early 2018 was kind of my exit strategy out of kind of the workforce and
Mhm.
into entrepreneurship and owning my own company
Which is a
and
whole other plunge, right? In and of
yeah.
itself. Yeah.
So
Learning
it
curve.
it was it was very scary,
Yeah.
to leave the safety net of, employment, but at the same time, it's very liberating to kind of step out. And it's not something I would have done on my own if it wasn't for, my kids and my girlfriend now that, we've been together almost 7 years, where it was like a lot of her prodding. She was like, "Hey, are you going to jump, or are you just going to be afraid to take the leap?" And I was like, "Stop pushing me, woman."
Yeah.
And really, kudos to her for really having the gumption to give me the push I needed to follow and pursue my passion. So, and here we are. It's
And here we are.
2023 now. I've been teaching full time since 2018. So this is year number 5, and hopefully it's as successful, if not more successful, than even years past. So,
Yeah. Going off on your own and doing anything like that, especially when you've been employed for so long, is really it does require planning, right? But
right.
also takes a huge leap of faith. You have to have so much faith in your own ability to be able to provide for your family. I mean, yes, you do have to have a plan, but there's a faith factor there that must be in place, I believe,
100%.
in order to really do it. Because when the rubber meets the road, man, you're standing on the edge of that cliff.
Right.
You just got to surrender and
Well,
say,
exactly.
okay.
You're asking that question, like, what
Mhm.
if this doesn't work out? Like, what
Right.
what then? Like, what do
Mhm.
I do? So, I mean, it,
Yeah.
it was nice to always have the support, even from my old employer, to say like, "Hey, if this doesn't
Yeah.
work out, just give me a call,
Yeah.
let me know."
Yeah.
So it's like always in the back of my mind, it's
That's
like, okay,
nice.
I guess I've got that. But then there's a larger part of me. It was like, I will not fail, you
Right.
know?
Yeah,
And
and that
so,
leads me into the next thing. I'm trying to drill down on this, Tim, but I can't really quantify it. So maybe you can help me, because you're a teacher, you have an analytical mind, and a need for speed. Those 3 things we've established. So I have this question here about, the parallels between performance racing and performance shooting, which, one could draw easy conclusions as to the parallels of those two. But it seems as though everything that you have spoken to us about keeps revealing this passion for mastery and learning whatever it is that you decide to dive into. Where does that passion come from, and can someone cultivate that, or where does that come from? I mean, I know that's a hard question to answer, but
it is.
some people just have that.
I'm not really for sure where it may have started from. I think, I don't know, growing up when I was like much younger, and as a kid, like to be honest, like my folks didn't really have like the funds or the necessary means to like let me and my younger brother like do or try a lot of like different sports or activities and things like that. So I was
Mhm,
always hungry, like, oh man, I'd
mhm,
always love to play like little league baseball, or, and a lot of this, like I got to play little league for a couple of years, but then again, it was one of those things. It was like, a couple of years went by, and, then it was like, my folks were like, man, we don't know about this year. Let's try something different. I mean, they were always encouraging, but unfortunately just didn't quite have the means to be able to pursue a lot of those things. So
mhm.
I kind of fell into, like, especially in junior high and high school, when I could play scholastic sports. Um, that was always fun. And it was always intriguing to try to be the best I could. And I mean, for those that might know a little bit about me, um, I'm a kind of a man of small stature, and I always have been. And I mean that like literally. So I mean, I've always been. I think I kind of peaked in my growth, I think, at about like maybe the 8th or 9th grade. Like, so 5'6" is about as tall as I ever got. So, unfortunately, I was too small, like according to my mom, to ever play like football or contact sports. So, and I wasn't short, I wasn't tall enough to play basketball or anything. So I really fell into soccer and wrestling. And so
Mhm.
I wrestled for a couple of years. A couple of,
It says you're
couple of
tall in our
sprains.
hearts. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but a couple of sprains and things like that. Of course, it kind of an overdoting mom was like, nope, you're not doing that anymore. That can be bad. I don't want you to get injured. So then I fell into soccer, and soccer was one of those things that everybody second guesses the little guy, and I was the smallest guy,
The
shortest.
underdog.
So I mean, I had to work my rear off, 5 times harder than everybody else, because things didn't come necessarily naturally to me. I don't think I
Mhm.
was ever one of those, like, what you would call a quote unquote naturally gifted athlete. It's like
Mhm.
I had to work really hard for those things. But I had a passion, and that was one of those things. Like I didn't want to be last picked. I didn't want to be, the odd man out. I didn't want to be any of those things. So
Mhm.
I've always had that push and that passion I want to be the best I possibly can at things. Just a lot of times maybe to prove people wrong, or maybe just to prove myself to myself. So I
Mhm.
think that's where a lot of it came from.
Yeah,
Driving,
that
when
makes
I got
sense.
into when I got into autocross and performance driving, that was one of those things where it was like I finally found my niche, right?
Mhm.
Like I fit the bill for everything that a professional race car driver needs to be. I'm small. I can fit inside the smallest of places, right? So you think about like Formula One cars and Indy cars and things like that. And I started autocrossing when I was like 20, 22, 23 years old. So, I mean, there was a lot of those things I was like, oh man, this is perfect. I'm of the right age. I'm of the right stature. I've got the right heart. And I found out that I did have a pretty good knack and ability for steering a car around a course like really, really well. And,
Mhm.
and it paid off. I've got, multiple kind of national trophies behind my name, a lot of podium finishes, in the racing circles for many, many years, as
And
well
now
as,
in the shooting circles, right?
yeah. And it kind of pulled over. The thing about shooting that was really, that also kind of fell, like near and dear to me, was the fact, again, it didn't matter age, size, shape, athleticism. It was like if you can do two things very, very well, right? Like, can you hold the gun in an effort to keep it still enough to press the trigger and fire a good shot? Then great, you've got the skill necessary to move on to do other things, right?
Mhm.
So, and it was neat, to find out like, oh man, it's a timed event, and there's obstacles, and there's things to do, and yeah, it was, it's a great test of skill. And
Yeah.
that really just that intrigued me a lot, to the point where here we are. I started shooting in 2010. We're 2023. So it's been 13 years now. And I am just as passionate for shooting, both competitively and even more so as a coach and instructor, as
Mhm.
I've ever been. And that's cool.
That is cool. Could you speak to, you said that you learned how to practice properly, and that's what put you from, like, a plateau level to the next level. What were
Mhm.
your pain points along the way in going from, a low-level shooter or someone that just was starting to rising through the ranks? Were there pain points along the way? How did you overcome those? And
Sure.
what do you mean by practicing properly?
So pain points along the way. Let me hit on that point first. So everybody in their journey as a shooter, whether you're a competitive shooter, whether you're a defender, any of those things, right? You come to a certain point where you plateau, where you just feel like, man, I'm doing dry fire. I'm shooting at practice, and I'm doing these things, and I'm making progress, until like you just kind of feel like you plateau out. Everybody kind of
Mhm.
knows what that plateau is. It's just like, man, I mean, for each person, it's a little bit different, right? It's just like, man, I don't know how to I don't know how to get past where I'm at. Like I've reached this ceiling, and I can't seem to move past it.
Mhm.
And there were many times throughout just like learning how to be a better competitive shooter, where I was just like, man, I can't seem to break this particular plateau, whether it
Mhm.
was like draw to a first shot, or whether it's any particular drill, something I may be working on
Reloads.
for
Yeah.
a number of weeks or months or days or whatever the case may be, where I was just like, I can't seem to get out of my own way. And that's pretty much what a
Yeah.
plateau is. What
Yeah.
I tell folks, regarding plateaus is like, we look at plateaus as like they're ceilings, right? They're like they're keeping me away from being able to see my true potential. But I look at also plateaus as a way of saying like, okay, it's your opportunity to kind of stop and reassess, and maybe like smell the roses, like be able to stop and assess where you came from, how far you've come, and then be able to kind of also then like maybe turn the page on the roadmap and figure out where you want to go next. So plateaus
Mhm.
aren't necessarily bad. I used to think plateaus were terrible because I hated kind of falling into that stop where I was just, I can't continue to progress.
Mhm.
And for me, a lot of it was bad practice habits. I would go to the range and I would shoot, and I would think that like I'm getting better simply because I'm putting a ton of rounds downrange. I think in the year 2012 through 2013, I shot someplace in the neighborhood of between 50 and 60,000 rounds in both of those years, not collectively. That was like 55,000 rounds in 2012, and I think I shot almost 60,000 rounds in 2013 with no real measurable progression. But
Wow.
I was doing all the things I was supposed to, right? Everything that the
Right.
books were telling me to do. Dry
Mhm.
fire every day, handle the gun for an hour or 2 hours every day, go to the range 3 times a week,
So
shoot
what
live.
was missing?
What's that?
What was missing? The thoughtfulness behind it?
I think a lot of it, yeah, purposefulness, right? Like
Oh.
I'm going through the motions, but I didn't really have a purpose. I didn't have a
Oh.
plan, and I wasn't observant in what I was truly doing. So, and I think a lot of folks, and probably a lot of listeners, kind of looking at the list of comments there on the StreamYard, some of the folks and some of the names I see are very familiar, and I know that they have also kind of felt or experienced the same thing. And it's like, well, I'm going through the motions. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. So and so came out with the drill of the week or drill of the month, and I'm gonna do that. But then they're just not making the progress they want. And a lot of it is you're in it for the wrong reasons. You know,
Mm.
you you're in it with a goal in mind, but you don't have a plan on how to reach that goal. And
Mhm.
that's where I think that's where practice with purpose comes from. So in 2000, the end of 2012, early of 2013, I took my first like big formal 3-day class where I traveled, a couple of states away to go take a class with a known instructor. And that guy for me was Mike Seeklander.
Mm.
And Mike has been and will be forever one of my most treasured, kind of friendships as well as mentorships that I've ever had with anybody.
Mhm.
And the thing I got from Mike over 3 days of intense training with him was he's like, man, you're fast. And man, you can do this well, but you can't do this and this together well because you've not really sought out a purpose and how to put like all the pieces of the puzzle together. And so, like the biggest thing I took away from Mike was like having a plan and having a
Mm.
purpose for that plan and
Mhm.
being focused in your practice. Like there is such a thing as overtraining or just
Mhm.
going through the motions and not really paying attention to all of the little things.
Right.
And that class for me was like that was the turning point. So I was
Mhm.
at the time I was a USPSA B class shooter and with aspirations of just making like A class. I was like, man, if I could make A class, I will feel I'm worthy, right?
Yeah.
And throughout 2013, that year, I kind of put an action plan, kind of his thought process and action plan into kind of my practice. And I started practicing with a purpose. And so every drill, every exercise, I want to spend X amount of time doing it, X amount of reps doing it, but I want 100% mental and emotional focus on
Mm.
what I'm doing to learn and understand better why things are breaking down the way they are or how I'm progressing the way I'm progressing, right? And
Mhm.
so throughout the course of like the next 6 months, throughout that season of 2013, I went from B class and jumped right past A and made class in USPSA. And so
Wow.
I am almost kind of like just by pure happenstance. And a lot of it was just because I had clear cut goals and I had a roadmap. Like I had created a roadmap for myself. I
Yeah.
want to do this. And once I achieve that, then I'm going to do this. And once I achieve that, then I'm going to blend these two things together to achieve this other thing. Right.
Mhm.
Goal
Mhm.
setting is a big part of it. And having the mental fortitude to stay focused and to stay 100% purposeful in what you're doing.
That's really good. Really good. So when you're in that plateau that you talked about, I
Mhm.
mean, if it seems as though you could go one of two ways. You could either, as you were talking about, reach out for help maybe and continue on to progress, but that could be the point of burnout right there if you're not careful.
100%.
What causes burnout and how can people prevent that, do you think?
Uh, the biggest thing, and I know this from experience. So, like I said, one of the things that burned me out in car racing was a lot of it was overextending myself, like overstimulus of things, right? So I was teaching driving on the weekends. If I wasn't teaching driving on the weekends and I was traveling all over the country with car in tow to go to big, to go to big events and hopefully compete and do well. Um, if I wasn't doing that, then it was like every single weekend that I didn't have anything else going on, I took upon a lot of volunteerism with like my Kansas City region when I lived in Kansas City region SCCA. I wanted to give everything
Yeah.
all at once, right? So like I wanted to volunteer to help run for the board. I wanted to design stages or courses. I wanted to share so much of myself with everybody else
Mhm.
that unfortunately it also strung me thin on and other aspects too. It became I was over volunteering for so much that it went from a passion to it became a chore. And when it
Yeah.
becomes a chore, you need
Yeah.
to recognize that
Mhm.
and know when to kind of pump the brakes a little bit. And for some people, it could be just like get off the throttle a touch, right?
Mhm.
Like figuratively speaking.
Figuratively.
For others, it can mean completely like it's time to take a complete break. Like
Yeah.
when we're talking about firearms training, maybe put the gun down for a few weeks, and I'm not saying like walk away from being a defender or being prepared, but it
Yeah.
means like if you're dry firing an hour every single night, 7 days a week, and you feel like you're just spinning your wheels, you probably, first of all, don't have the right goals set for yourself, or your goals are unrealistic, right? And it's like everybody would love to be a national champion, but there can only be one, right? But at the same time, there are things that I can do to set smaller goals for myself along the way to becoming a national champion that become then just as just as rational, but just as hungry for me to achieve than just someday I'm going to be a national champion. Okay, great.
Mhm.
What does that mean to you? Well, I'm just going
Mhm.
to do whatever it takes to be a national champion. So they read books or they find out like whoever the previous, the reigning national champion is to do, and they're like, I'm just going to do everything they do. You're not going to do it by blind emulation. It's not going to work that way.
Mhm.
It's going to happen if you've got micro goals that you set along the way, right? Like, first of all, in order to be a national champion, I need to achieve this. And then once I achieve that, now I need to put this as my next kind of step or next rung of the ladder, so to speak, to
Mhm.
continue climbing and keeping
Mhm.
yourself interested and motivated. But if
Mhm.
you kind of lack the motivation, or maybe if you're overwhelming yourself in motivation, that's when it's time to like I said, take a break. And for some people, it's take a break for a day, take a break for a week, take a break for a month. There have been a couple of times that I forced myself in my own shooting, um, maybe not as an instructor, right? Because that's my full-time job now, but as like for my own training or my own progression, I forced myself to take a break throughout the entire month of December and generally throughout the month of January. Give myself like a full 60-day break. And
So when you
sometimes
come back, you're excited to come
I'm
back, is that
hungry,
why?
right? I'm
Yeah.
starving for it. Like, I
Yeah.
can't wait to put the gun back on. I can't wait to start training again. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean in the meantime that I'm not doing something else that might be firearm related, but
Mhm.
maybe it's not like passionately about competition, right?
Mhm.
Maybe
Or
it's
tea.
I get out the long guns and I go
Yeah.
shoot. I go plink 800-yard steel. Maybe it's I grab the 22 and I just go shoot with my daughter or go shoot with my
Yeah.
girlfriend, or
Yeah.
it could be anything. Maybe I'm just going to put my appendix rig on today and I'm going to focus like the next 30 days or 40 days just on maybe dry firing my defensive stuff, because
Mhm.
Lord knows I probably don't spend as much time with that as I need to, right? But
Mhm.
it's things that still keep me active and keep me interested, but are
Yeah.
things that are a far away from what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis from say February 1st through December 1st. And
Yeah.
it's needed.
And how important do you think accountability is? We talked about that a little bit earlier. Not just accountability, but having kind of a support system, like a group of people maybe that are like minded or that are also kind of working on the same sorts of goals. To me, that seems to be really valuable in my
100%.
life. And
So
without it, it would be so hard to go it alone.
mentorship is one thing. Peer group is another,
Hmm.
right? And we have to be able to learn and differentiate who is a mentor and who is a peer. And they
Hmm.
both have their place, and they're both as equal but oppositely important, right? A mentor is somebody who can help guide you along the way, and give you a path or help you, um,
With the
like
roadmap.
help you kind of design or
Yeah.
help you navigate, right, the roadmap of where you want to be.
Hmm.
The peer is like, okay, and it's so weird. I'm using so many like car and travel analogies right now, but like peer, that's your ride or die, right? That's the dude that jumps in the passenger seat and says, I got shotgun, and they're with you every step of the way. They're helping you decipher the roadmap. They're the guy or gal or the car full of people that are singing along to every song on the radio, so to speak. They're the guys, they're the ones cheering you on. They're the ones that are giving you the constant critique, and input, and helping you along the way. They're the
Yeah.
people that you go to the range with. They're the people that
Yeah.
you dry fire with. They're the people that you might do an online, like an online, I don't know, Skype session with, where maybe
Yeah.
you're FaceTiming each other and you're like, okay, cool. We're going to do a 30-minute dry fire session, just the two of us or the three of us or whatever. And I
Hmm.
mean, that's really cool to have. The peer
Yeah.
guy, the peer group is the people that are like, they're making you accountable, right? They're the
Hmm.
gym partner. When you don't want to go to the gym because you've just been working so hard all day and you're so tired, right? It's that guy that's going, hey, it's 7 o'clock. We got to go to the gym. Let's go
Yeah.
right now. Like, but I don't want to. And he's like, yeah, but I didn't want to yesterday and you made me go. So now I'm
Yeah.
going to make you go. And
Yeah.
I've had those along the way, and they're needed. I mean,
They
they
are.
make
Yeah.
you accountable, but at the same time, you get to hold them accountable, which also improves your accountability as well. You don't want to let them down, and
Right.
right, whether it's you're letting yourself down or you're letting them down. So by
Yeah.
God, you're all in this together.
Right. And you have to be honest too, which is hard sometimes. I mean, you need people that are really brutally honest with you in a loving way.
Yep.
But and you have to be honest as well, because if all you're doing is massaging each other's egos, then that really doesn't do anybody any good in the long run, I don't think.
If,
So I
if
think that's
for a
important.
group, right, we call that, like, especially like in the social media context, we call that echo chambers.
Yeah.
Nobody likes an echo chamber, right? Because an
Mhm.
echo chamber is everybody patting each other on the back, and
Mhm.
they're breaking each other's arms to pat each other on the back for how good of a job they are doing or how much of
Mhm.
a subject matter expert they are, but
Mhm.
nobody's growing. It is
Right.
an echo chamber is a stagnant group of people who just they think they're doing better, but they're not, right?
Mhm.
I want to be challenged all the time, whether it's
Yeah.
from instructors, whether it's
Mhm.
from students, whether it's from friends and peers, I just all along the way. And I do a pretty good job of being able to challenge myself all the time too. But
Mhm.
it's great when you've got kind of that accountability coach as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think too that the people that are most honest with you, and that are also good friends, the people that have changed me and helped me the most have been the people that really made me mad at times, because
Oh,
they
you
tell you all
know
this
it.
stuff you don't wanna hear, but it's the truth,
Yep.
you know?
Yep. My
Yeah.
closest, my best friend, is AJ Zito, and I get to teach with AJ quite a bit. And AJ and I, because I mean, he lives like 6 hours away from me in Prescott, Arizona. I live at just east of Albuquerque, but I mean, we call and talk to each other probably 2 times a week at least. And it's not like a, hey bro, how you doing? How's the family? Okay, good, great. I
Yeah.
mean, like, we're on the phone. We talked yesterday for 2.5 hours, right?
Wow.
And it's everything. It's like, how was this? How was that? How's work going? And whether we're holding each other accountable for our businesses, right? And
Mhm.
or we're holding each other accountable for instructorship and mentorship, or like, he'll like, hey man, I just saw that video you shared with me, yesterday, and like, what the hell, man, that was awesome. And then at the same time, he's like, but bro, I noticed a couple of things, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
oh, I don't want
Uh
to hear this, like, but it's good. Like, it again, it's that constant camaraderie and
Yeah.
love and
Mhm.
passion for the
Yeah, it's
same
out of
thing
love.
that
It's out
help
of
us
love.
all
Yeah.
all grow together,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
at the same time, like, I'll send him something where I'm like, dude, take a look at this, and he might even just send me a text back and be like, bro, what were you thinking? And I'll be like, I wasn't, and I'll be like, So why did you do that? And it could be anything. Like maybe I spent 700 rounds trying to shoot like 3 pieces of steel,
Yeah.
in one practice session. And he's like, do you realize how ridiculous you just looked right now? And I'm like, yes, yes, very much so. And so sometimes you need that kind of that tug to get you back out of the clouds too,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
like
Balance is
for
key.
me, AJ's that guy,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
So, hey guys, we are almost towards the end of the live. So, if you have any questions for Tim, I see there's already some waiting for him. We're going to get into those very soon because we don't have a whole lot of time left in this hour because time flies when you're having fun. Uh, and really quickly, before we get into the Q&A, Tim, um, there were a couple of things. So, two things I want to ask you. What are
Okay.
your future goals? Because you're a man with a plan. You've always got goals going on. We want to know what's next for Tim Herron. And then also mention those classes you were telling me about that are coming up that I
Yeah.
think people would be interested in.
Okay. So, I mean, yes, I agree. Goals are important. So goal wise, and of course, this is kind of a life goal, and it doesn't mean that when I achieve this goal that like, okay, it's over, I'm done now. But
Right.
the one championship I've yet to win, well, there's been a couple, but the one championship I've yet to win is a national championship. So I've been close a few times. I'm very, very fortunate and blessed to have been able to finish kind of in the top 10 the last few years that I've been competing, at the upper pinnacle in the division that I shoot. But I've yet to win like the big one yet, right? So like a national championship, and then I'm working my way up to COVID kind of spoiled the plans for me. I had been working 2018, 2019 to earn a slot for the IPSC World Shoot, which was supposed to happen in Pattaya, Thailand in 2020. And then, of course, COVID had different ideas. So then it was postponed to 2021 and then again postponed until 2022 this past November. And unfortunately, I just couldn't keep putting off. I mean, a lot of things in life change in 3 years.
Yeah.
And so when it got postponed to 2022, unfortunately, it just wasn't in the cards for me to pursue even though I had qualified for a slot to represent Team USA. I unfortunately I had to regrettingly, give back my slot and not go. So I got the irons in the fire already stoked and ready to go for 2025. So I've got 2023 and 2024 to also again to qualify for a world shoot slot, which will be in South Africa in 2025. So I'm looking forward to trying to achieve my goal to earn a slot to represent Team USA at the World Shoot in South Africa. And along the way, hopefully this year, next year, 2025, or in the future, to possibly, bring home the gold and win my first, hopefully my first and maybe my first of many national championships as well. So I'm still trying to strike that delicate balance between full-time instructor and also like giving myself enough time and energy and practice and keeping myself motivated, like, to grow on my own and progress
Mhm.
as a shooter competitively so that I'm prepared to do those things. But, at the same time, I'm not putting any excuses out there, but I like my students and classes come first. I'm an instructor first, competitor second. And, if it happens, it's great. If it doesn't, that's okay as well. Right. I'm still going to do the best I absolutely can. Along the way, short-term goals. I'm a Grand Master in USPSA in like 3 different divisions. So I would like to go ahead and earn my 4th and 5th GM card in USPSA and a couple of other divisions I've been dabbling with in the last year or so. But I've never really put forth a full effort at those 2 divisions to just kind of earn my Grandmaster card, just as a way of kind of building the resume a little bit more too. So that's those are the 2 kind of short-term goals I've got for myself for this year. And then of course to definitely to coach as much as I can and instruct and be able to give the absolute best of myself class-wise and instructorship-wise to my peers and my students and alumni. So
Yeah, so you've got classes. You were speaking about one in Arkansas, Missouri, and was the other one New Mexico?
So I've got a one-day class coming up in Missouri. It's called Handgun Diagnostics and Foundations. So it's a one-day class that I'll be teaching in April. April, in Lee Summit, Missouri. So just outside Kansas City, in the Kansas City area. It's a one-day class there. I'll be teaching that at Frontier Justice, like on Saturday. I think I've got the.
And people can see all this at Tim Herron Shooting, right? Is it on your website?
It is in my website. Yes. So I'm sorry,
Okay.
that class is in March 11th. And then
Okay.
I've got a class in Little Rock, Arkansas that it's weirdly, those two classes are the only classes from now till I want to say June or July that aren't already sold out. So, I mean, the sold out classes are always good. I mean, it kind of helps me know that I'm doing something right, I guess. But these two classes, the one I've got in Little Rock, Arkansas coming up in April, and that one day class in Missouri are kind of new venues, places I haven't been before. So the demographics a little bit different, and I understand
Sure.
that as well. But yeah, I'm looking forward to
And then
being
you've
able
got an instructor
to.
class coming up, don't you?
I do.
You were
I only teach I've got a 3-day instructor diagnostics and development course, which is a little bit different, I think, than anything out there or anything that any other instructor kind of development course is, where it's not necessarily about like building it's not teaching you like how to build your curriculum or how to public speak or how to teach other people. It's more so about the diagnostics of becoming a better coach, like things to look for. Things to be able to see maybe a student doing, you being able to relate a solution to that student, and then being able to bring about the best in that
You sound
student.
like a mechanic, Tim.
Yeah, a lot. So, and I've got one of those coming up in May, over Memorial Day weekend at AJ's range, that Adam actually has attended a class with AJ and I November before last, for our Train for Mastery course. But I'll be teaching that class actually along with AJ, my instructor diagnostics and development course. It'll be a 3-day course over Memorial Day weekend in Prescott, Arizona. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
And
Awesome.
Tim, I'm jumping in here. I'll be in that class. I'm looking forward to taking that, especially
Excellent.
after that first one with you that Brian Hill and I did. That's fantastic. Hey, a couple questions for you that I think it's important for us to hear about. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about your dry fire? You're a dry fire king. I follow you quite a bit. I'd love to hear a little bit about that more. But also, too, would you talk about some realistic methods that you use either mentally but also physically to not just improve in dry fire, but other areas of life? What are things that others can do to mentally grow at their skills in the handgun world that might apply other places? So both dry fire and just the mental side of that.
So with dry fire, I approach my dry fire the same way I do my live fire, right? Which means I have a plan. I regiment, just think about and Laura and I kind of talked about this yesterday about like going to the gym, right? And everybody generally January 1st has got that, that like, man, this is my New Year's resolution. I'm going to get myself in shape. But they go to the gym and they have zero plan, right? And they're afraid to talk to somebody that might be able to help them develop or coordinate a plan or a training regimen, right? But dry fire is a lot like that. I mean, it's not a lot like that. It's exactly like that. You've got to have a plan when you go in. You can't just go like when you go to the gym and you see just this plethora of equipment. You go, I guess I'm going to do a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and right, and then you do everything and you're wore out, but you've really never accomplished anything. And in dry fire, we do the same thing. Like we buy the best books, right? And there's a ton of material out there, right? Steve Anderson has got the dry fire, the dry fire Bible, right? Refinement and Repetition. It's been around for a number of years. Ben Steger has got some incredible dry fire books and how to practice books. But everything about those books is it's such an overabundance of information, but there's no guidance really on, well, what do I do first? Right? I mean, you could flip to page 150 and it's the same information that it is on page 5. So it's like, well, okay, I guess I'm going to do from page 5 to page 150 all in one day today. And we overwhelm ourselves. This leads to burnout. So knowing that you're better off to practice small incremental things, but stay 100% focused mentally and physically on, say, 2 to 3 exercises throughout that one particular evening or day or morning of dry fire. instead of trying to hit on everything. Like I kind of break everything down in a kind of a regimented like workout session, like a split routine, right? Like, okay, today's gun handling stuff. I'm going to work on draws. I'm going to work on reloads. I'm going to work on maybe table pickups or oddball start positions or something like that, right? Don't think for a moment that these same things do not apply as a defender or as in the context of self-defense, right? So being able to learn how to pick up the gun off of a table is just as important as being able to learn how to grasp the gun from the holster and present the gun, right? And be able to grip the same way. I mean, there's times that you're doing other things. Think about how I would get in the gun, like open a drawer to pick the gun up and take the gun out of the holster, or take the gun up out of the drawer and be able to, to build a grip on the gun, to present the gun properly or consistently. So I look at those kind of things as like gun handling. And when I'm working on gun handling day, I just listed 5 or 6 different things that you could do. I would limit it to 2 or 3. I'm going to spend 20 minutes a day. I'm going to spend 10 minutes on draws, and I'm going to spend 10 minutes on, let's say, table pickups, right? And then maybe the next time that I revisit gun handling, I work on reloads for 10 or 15 minutes, and I work on, like, say, unloaded starts, right? Because they're related to each other.
Gotcha.
So, and then like maybe another day I work on just visual exercises, transitioning the gun from one target to another target, from a large target to a small target, from a near target to a far target, or a multitude of targets. And then I'm completely isolated from anything else. I'm not working on drawing the gun. I'm not working on adding any other complexities. I want to spend my entire 20 or 30 minutes, or maybe even just 10 minutes of dry fire, hard focused with 100% effort on that one particular thing, or those 2 particular things that I'm going to work on in that dry fire session. I have to be 100% enveloped and engrossed in those things. Right.
So do you cycle that through kind of on a regular basis, or just as you feel it? Or is that part of the plan? You set it up on a cycle?
I do. I kind of set it up on a cycle. There are other times, though, that just like a workout routine, you get stagnant, right? We get burnout if we continue to do the same thing over and over and over again. So this is where, again, a lot of those books that I mentioned, like, so Steve Anderson's book has got a multitude of drills and exercises in it. Ben Steger's book is phenomenal for it. It's got a multitude of drills. I can open up a book and I can spend 10 minutes. You're going to spend hours reading the book. So spend 10 minutes going back through the book and looking at related exercises, right? Hey, that's a gun handling exercise, or hey, that's more of a vision exercise or transition exercise, or oh, that's a movement exercise. So that's going to kind of go into my movement regimen, and this is going to go into my gun handling regimen, and this might go into my vision regimen. And so then I've got different things to kind of pick and pull from to keep every dry fire regimen or every dry fire session fresh and new. The other thing you should be doing in dry fire is keeping a practice log.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to keep a journal. Adam, you've taken that class though with AJ and I. That was the number one thing that we endorsed and encouraged more than anything else, was taking notes, right? Whether those notes are dry fire or live fire, and they should be both, right? Because that's the way you're able to mark your improvement. If you're not marking your improvement, then how can you tell whether you're actually improving or not? And generally, a lot of times we spin our wheels without realizing that we are improving, but we're not marking the improvement in a book for us to go back to, or in a journal to go back to and see, oh my God, 5 weeks ago when I revisited this and I didn't feel like I was making any improvement. And we go back five pages in our journal of 5 weeks ago when we visited that again, we go, oh, wait a minute, I have improved. I'm not plateauing like I thought I was.
So that's one of the nuggets I got out of that class. And ever since then, that's actually changed my own dry fire and ultimately changed the shooting. I actually have a ton more questions for you. I'm hoping you'll be willing to come back. But Laura, I know there's a bunch of audience questions on here that are really good. So maybe we should turn that back to you.
Adam, if I can intervene there real quick. I noticed just over your left shoulder on that table behind you is probably my absolute most favorite book in the known universe. And I was recommending that book to Laura yesterday. Yes. The Inner Game of Tennis by W. Timothy Galway. You want to know how to improve your mental game. That's the way to improve it. That book, by like far and wide, is probably the best mental strategy book there is for overcoming pressure, or not really overcoming pressure, because you can't overcome pressure, but learning how to embrace pressure and work within pressure to learn how to just execute.
Okay, so there's something golden here, right? Obviously, Tim, you have the observation skills. I would say you now need to become a police officer, right? Because most people don't notice that.
I
I
noticed
usually
it.
put something over my shoulder that I want people to notice that I think is important, but you need to become a cop. That's just all I say.
You passed the test, Tim.
I told Laura I generally buy 2 to 3 copies of that book every year to give away as Christmas presents, or to hold on throughout the year to give out to people that, like, I recommend that book and they're like, where could I get that? And I'm like, give me your address. I'll send you a copy.
Oh, awesome. That's so cool.
So
Yeah.
the Lenny Basham with Winning in Mind book is phenomenal.
Yep.
I know that's kind of in the that's in the encouraged reading section of like John Correa's instructor development program as well. It's a great mental strategy book, but it's a hard read. It's thick. There's a lot of stuff to go into it, and there's a lot of things, like, you'll read that book for years. The Inner Game of Tennis, though, is a great read. It's easy to understand. The concepts are simple, and it's a great book to revisit every year. I've read it seriously every single year without fail since I started shooting, or since I started taking shooting seriously in 2012.
Wow.
So from 2012 to 2023, I just cracked it open just the other day. So
cool.
Phenomenal book.
Well, we have a lot of questions for you, Tim. Let me see if we've rounded them all up here.
Cool.
Are you good with going through these?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Tori wants to know your opinion on the new limited optics in USPSA. He says, I can't. Oh, Adam, are you clicking stuff? I can't remember if it's been voted on yet, but it is a good thing. Is it a good thing, or are classes getting to be too many?
So people are going to go to where they go in the sport of USPSA, right? So giving people options is not necessarily a bad thing. And of course, you got to remember, this is me coming from, 13 years autocrossing and racing, where there were at the time 66 different divisions or classifications of different race cars and things to drive. So you want to talk about an overabundance of classifications that might, so to speak, thin the talent pool a little bit. And it never did do any such thing. Nobody could ever say, like, oh man, I won a national championship because so-and-so wasn't there, because there'd be 5 other so-and-sos that might move from a different class to try to take that championship away from you. So I think the talent pool is as deep as what your particular skill level is. I think the limited optics division is going to be a hit. And why is because the most popular pistol right now kind of on the planet is, and we're seeing a resurgence of it, is the 1911 double stack, or what we call the 2011s. So, I mean, we're seeing a huge resurgence of those. Like STI changed their name 4 years ago to Staccato. We're seeing those guns now, those pistols, being approved for duty use for law enforcement. And lots of law enforcement departments have adopted them and allowed them for duty use. So now you've got, and of course, just like with anything, as soon as it's adopted for law enforcement and military use, then they sell like hotcakes to the available public, because civilians see it and was like, well, if Copper Crime Stoppers got it, then I need to have it. So we're seeing a huge resurgence in 1911s and 2011s. They don't necessarily have a grasp right now. And red dots are the other thing. That's what limited optics really kind of stems from, is single action only pistols with red dots attached to them. That's the 2 biggest predominant things we've seen over the last 4 years. That's been the hardest, or the highest growing and hardest hit market in the firearms industry, is 2011 single action guns with red dot optics. And yet there's not really a division in place for people to take these new founded pistols to go shoot competitively. IDPA allows them, USPSA hasn't. So USPSA has proposed a provisional division called limited optics, which would allow like carry optics, but for 2011 pistols. It's not been voted on yet. It won't be voted on until the end of January, probably 1st of February, where USPSA will be taking all of the input based on membership surveys to hopefully then sit down at a board meeting and take all of those surveys seriously and find out, if it's viable or not. And if the membership wants it, then the membership will receive it, and it'll become a provisional division. I've already got my limited optics gun ready, and I'm going to be a staunch supporter of limited optics throughout the entire year. Just to compete with it because it's fun. High capacity 1911s with red dot optics. What's not to love about it?
All right. The practical guardian wants to know, do you have any specific things that you do or used to do to focus yourself during a competition and drown out the stress and jitters that he finds works with students in a class also?
Drowning out stress or jitters, I think, is, I don't want to say it's the wrong way to look at it. Because in the reality of things is it doesn't happen that way. We don't learn how to drown out the jitters or to drown out pressure. What we do is we either learn how to embrace the pressure and embrace, anxiety and learn how to execute while embracing it, or we fail. The best way to learn how to, I guess, to quote unquote, drown it out is to expose yourself to it as much as possible. Your practice should mean something. Your dry fire should mean something. Holding yourself accountable should mean something. Being able to kind of generate those stressors or that pressure in your own dry fire and in your own practice is hellaciously important, because that's needed to learn how to cope with it. There's no way. I mean, and so think about it from a defense standpoint. In a true fight for your life, are you going to be able to take 5 or 6, breaths and breathe away the stress so that you can then execute on demand what you've been training your entire life to do, right? That fight for your life is going to be the biggest and highest level of stressors you've ever had. You better be willing and know without a doubt that you can do it. And that confidence comes from inoculation to doing it, right? You've got to expose yourself to it over and over again. So, and that's where a lot of dry fire that goes wrong. That's where a lot of live fire goes wrong. That's where people feel stagnant, is because they're never putting themselves under any pressure. So then when they go and they take a particular class, or they go and compete on the range, or they have to pass a certain qualification, they're not used to dealing with that level of stress or pressure, and they crumble. And when they crumble, they feel like, well, dang it, all of this work I did for nothing. And all I tried to do was try to reduce the amount of stress. And it's like, yep, you're going about it all wrong. You've got to think about it the opposite direction. I need to induce stress in my own dry fire and live fire practice so that I'm ready when the time comes. And that stress just becomes a part of who I am. I can't tell you the last time that I didn't feel like, I'm more scared when I don't feel stress. Like, even I literally, I'll step up to the line and I'll say, okay, make ready. And I'll look at the stage and I'll make ready. And then I'll kind of look at things. I put the gun in the holster and I might think to myself, like, hang on a minute. Like, what's wrong with me? Why do I not feel any pressure right now? To me, that's a bad sign. That means that tells me I'm not taking something as serious as I should. And that to me is that's a trigger for, okay, pay attention to what's going to happen next. Because if I falter or I fail or I push too hard and I wasn't ready to receive that stressor, then it's on me. Like, it wasn't I messed this up or I screwed this up. It's, well, nope, I didn't put myself in the right frame of mind to kind of execute within that level of pressure.
Yeah, because isn't high performance, it's a balance. It's not, you're not on one particular spectrum of being like, but you're also not at the other end of being too comfortable, because then you can't perform well, right?
Exactly. Think of it this way, right? So think about like skydiving.
Yeah.
Right? Most skydivers stop jumping out of airplanes the moment it becomes boring.
Mm.
It's a known fact. Most guys are like, man, it just wasn't fun anymore. What do you mean it wasn't fun? It wasn't fun to jump out of a perfectly good airplane at 10,000 feet and plummet to your possible death with a bag attached to your backpack. And they're like, I've done it so many times. I don't feel the adrenaline. I don't feel the stressors. I don't feel the pressure or the anxiety. And a lot of that is what's missing. And when it's missing, it becomes boring. And when it becomes boring, it becomes stagnant. When it becomes stagnant, we're not going to do it anymore.
Right.
Shooting, whether it's training, whether it's practice, whether it's competition, anything is going to be that same way. If it's stagnant, you're not growing anymore. When you're not growing anymore, you're not going to feel the hunger or desire to continue doing it, and you'll burn out.
Really good, Tim. All right. Nelson wants to know, do you see still challenge as a value training tool as in drawing, transition, or practice in general speed shooting?
Sure.
I didn't read that
Skill
very
challenge
well.
has just as much to do with purposeful practice as USPSA matches or IDPA matches. Know that when you're going to a steel challenge match, it is not training. Neither is a USPSA match, nor is an IDPA match, nor is an NRA action pistol match. A match is not training. The match is the test of your training so that you'll know how to evaluate your level of performance and make adjustments in your practice. And practice and training is where you get better. Steel challenge, just like USPSA or anything else, is just it's the exam after the week, 2 weeks, months long worth of homework that you do. Do I still see it having a lot of value? Absolutely. You're drawing the gun, you're under the clock, you're moving the gun target to target, you're transitioning the gun. It's great as a test. Know that it is a test. It is the quiz or the exam. It is not the actual training. You're fooling
That's
yourself.
kind of like what Mike Green was saying last time about, he said live fire was his way to test his dry fire.
So think about that. Dry fire is your homework.
Yeah.
Live fire is your validation of that homework. So it's like taking the pre-quiz. We all remember pre-quizzes in high school, right? The pre-quiz was the teacher giving you a little taste of what the actual exam for the final was going to be. And if you didn't pass the quiz, it basically told you what? You need to go home and you need to study chapters whatever through whatever. So live fire is my way to validate that my dry fire is working the way it should be. If it doesn't, then I go back to the drawing board on the dry fire and I fix it. And then the live fire becomes, again, the validation that I am, in fact, dry firing appropriately and correctly. And then the match becomes okay, now I have to put it all together. And that's the exam. And that's how I test myself. And then, of course, like the finals, right, are the big matches. Like, are my local matches? Am I still exerting the same effort? Am I still putting myself under the same emotional stressors? Am I still exposing myself to the same types of pressure and anxiety? And how am I functioning within that realm at local matches? And if I'm functioning well at local matches, then I'm more prepared then to go take the final exam, which would be like my area championships or state championships or national championships. It's just a continuation or a much larger exam or a larger test of the things that I'm doing in dry fire and live fire.
Really good. I think there's only a couple more, and I'm not sure they're all serious.
Okay.
But let's see. So Chris Brady was talking about, I don't know if this is serious or not, a class for purposeful practice with AJ?
Chris Brady knows that I have that class with purposeful practice. So I do. And I think he was kind of joking. It's kind of a lead into, yes. So that's actually what began me and AJ brainstorming for our practice with purpose class, which is a 1-day class. And then our 2-day train for mastery, which is a continuation class of what the practice for purpose class is. And what that started with was AJ giving me a phone call one day, 2 years ago. And he's like, bro, I just got off the range with Scott Jedlinski, because he co-instructs with Scott Jedlinski quite often. And he goes, I just got off the range with Scott. He goes, can I ask you a question? And I go, sure. And he goes, man, do you often get students that'll like take a full 2-day class and they're just inundated with information And then they hit you with like this big punch in the mouth, which is, okay, cool. I got all these drills and all these exercises and all these ways to improve my technique, but how do I practice it? How do I put it together? Like, what do I do to improve my own practice? And I was like, oh my gosh, every single class, somebody hits me with that. And he was like, why doesn't anybody have a class to teach people how to practice better or actually practice purposefully? And I was like, you genius, looking, bearded, lovable teddy bear, you're onto something. I said,
Yeah.
he goes, I've got an idea. And I was like, dude, I've been brainstorming the same kind of ideas for a while now. And he goes, well, what do you got? And I was like, well, what do you got? And the next thing you know, over the next course of like, I want to say it was about 6 weeks, for almost an hour to 2 hours a day for almost 6 weeks straight, we developed a one-day curriculum, which was practice with purpose. We taught our first one-day practice with purpose class, and it was a hit. But there were so many things that we didn't get to touch on in the one-day class that we were like, we went back to AJ's house and kind of over bourbon and steaks and things. We were like, man, we didn't get to cover this. We didn't get to cover that. We didn't get to cover this. We sure as heck didn't even get a chance to talk about these other things. And AJ's like, we need a 2-day class. And I was like, yes, we do. And so then our Train for Mastery class. And it's seen 2 or 3 iterations even over the last 2 years of time. And, we've cleaned up some things. We've streamlined some things and really come up with a great program to teach people that the absolute value of that number one question that we get all the time. And it doesn't matter who you've trained with or what class you've taken. The question is always the same. I've got all this information. Now, how do I put it together into a practice plan that makes sense for me? And that's the goal of the class. It's a class that nobody, I don't think anybody on earth is teaching anything like it. And it's really cool.
That's really important stuff because, it doesn't really matter what level shooter you are. When you go into a class and you drink from a fire hose for however many days, that's how we all feel at the end of it. Okay, now I got to come up with a plan to apply this to what I'm doing. And
Correct.
That can be overwhelming. So that's really, really key. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to pop up one last question here from another Chris, and it has something to do with pumpkin spice. I don't know. Dying to know, can you explain your fascination with pumpkin spice? That must be an inside joke.
Tactical advantage, Mr. Christopher Bean. I love Chris. One of my nearest and dearest. I love Chris tons. My fascination with pumpkin spice. What can I say? I'm basic like that. I've always I don't know what it really stems from. I think it's my favorite season. And many would call, like when people talk about their favorite season, if they're a spring person or a summer person or a winter person, I'm a fall person. Always have been. I mean, from birth to my 46 years now on this planet, I am a fall person. I love everything about the fall. I love pumpkins. I love Halloween. My favorite holiday in the world is Thanksgiving. I would give up Christmas for the next 30 years to have Thanksgiving. Like I love the fall. And so things that are customary with the fall, of course, are pumpkin and pumpkin spice and things. And I love the chilly weather. I love hoodie season. I love all of it. Yeah. I think I fell in love with pumpkin and everything pumpkin and pumpkin spice. And yeah.
Now you guys all know what to give Tim as a gift. If you ever go to one of his classes, you want to get him anything, you know what to bring.
Bourbon or pumpkin spice. That's it.
That's awesome. Well, Tim, we're over the hour. Everyone has stayed on with us for the most part, and great questions, guys. So I want to wrap up here, but I do want to thank you so much for your time tonight. You've been a lot of fun. I knew you would be, and your information has been really, really great as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I mean, I'm as you can tell, like I'm passionate about this stuff. I love both competing. I love shooting, and I love giving students the same aha moments. In fact, I love having those aha moments myself. So, I mean, I love every aspect of teaching and coaching and just
it's very obvious. So. Yeah, it's obvious.
Awesome.
Hey, Tim, before we cut out of here, I have a million questions for you I've written down. I haven't got to. Would you be willing to come back sometime? Because I have a ton more for you.
100%. Yes, sir,
Okay.
I would. Absolutely.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'm going to move on to what we're going to do next week. So next week we are going to have Shelly Hill on. It's going to be a pre-recorded broadcast, but it's going to drop at the same time our live stream would drop, which is 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time next Wednesday. So Shelly is going to do something with me that I've never done before. She teaches a image-based decisional drills class, and she is the co-owner of the Complete Combatant. So anybody out there that knows Brian Hill, Shelly Hill is Brian Hill's better half. So she is going to run me through some of the image-based decisional drills and on camera and put me on the spot. Hopefully I can learn something new, share it with you. We're going to break everything down after she runs me through it. So it should be a good learning experience, not only for me, but hopefully for you guys too. So that'll be a kind of a different flavor, a different twist on the lives, but that will still be coming out 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time next week on Wednesday. And I'll be posting that on the YouTube channels, Defenders USA and Defenders Live, as well as I think I can post that long of a video on the Defenders Live Facebook group. So that's the plan for next week. We'll see you at 7 p.m. on Wednesday next week. Until then, take care.